Hey, welcome to Topic North Texas. We're back. It's still going on. We're really excited to be here. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the primaries coming up.
A little bit.
And we're going to be spending some time, kind of a more deep dive into housing, some of the housing pressures that we're seeing here in North Texas, how cities are responding, some of the legislation that just went into effect here in January 1. So hold on to your seatbelts because we're going to have a great time. First up, of course, we need the dirt. Okay. What's going on in the primaries here in Texas? Where are we?
Well, it is officially 33 days until early voting opens here in Texas, which means if you're keeping count at home, a lot of mail-in ballots have already gone out, especially to our friends and family serving overseas, as well as they will start getting them in elderly homes and anywhere you can get a mail-in ballot. So it has started. If your Facebook ads and digital ads and TV ads haven't told you yet, everybody's making those buys. Everybody's going for your vote. And it's statewide. We're a little not used to getting a big statewide push.
Right.
You know, sometimes you might even get to skip a dirty primary in your area. Not this year. All of Texas is vulnerable on both sides of the aisle this time, which is what is so interesting.
A lot of noise. I've already been getting mailers, at least for the comptroller, and a couple of other seats. So it's a lot coming.
I talked to someone who is a Democrat, and he's excited. It's his first time he's like, I feel like my vote is going to count in a primary, and it doesn't normally.
Right.
So I think you're seeing a lot of energy on both sides. Lord knows we've had enough news in the last 15 days that it feels like we've been in 2026, maybe more than only 15 days, but here we go.
Yeah.
To touch on federal for just a minute, we are still, if you're keeping count at home, barreling towards another end of a CR. The CR that they signed to end the government shutdown last year ends on January 30th. There have been several appropriations bills passed the House. None of them have yet made it through the Senate. We are looking at a likely continuing resolution again. I don't think either side is itching for a shutdown. No one I've talked to in Washington has said we're dying to close the government down again. That went great for all of us. I don't think you're going to see a prolonged shutdown. I think they will come together to sign a CR. I'm hearing talk of maybe a year-long CR to kind of remove that pressure for the rest of the election year because neither side can decide how it's going to play enough. And 2026 is a huge election year for Republicans and Democrats.
Sure.
So that's kind of what's happening federally. This is a podcast that is not going to get into the minutia of our.
There are people that are much more plugged in and much more
what's going on in foreign policy and war and what countries we are currently possibly taking over. We're not going to do that here. We are happy to recommend places.
Yeah, there's plenty to look at. but we, if those things start to drift down into what we talk
policy,
about, we work with Lockheed Martin, we work with Bell, we work with a lot of our defense contractors here in North Texas, and you can bet that they are watching what's going on in D.C. As the federal government continues to spend money on this stuff.
So it is also, we're recording this on January 15th. By midnight tonight, we should have a pretty good idea where all of our candidates stand as far as money. Reports are due, and that will be everything they've raised from whenever they declare their candidacy to December 31st. So if you got a bunch of emails from candidates you support leading up to, at your New Year's party, they're texting you. The cutoff was midnight on December 31st.
It's the most important cutoff.
Most important election. They just need $5. We've all gotten the emails. We've all gotten the texts. But it's a great barometer of who's coming to play. There are several of these seats. You might not know there are 12 people running for governor. 11 people running for governor. On the Republican primary side, Greg Abbott's not worried about any of them, to be clear. You look at the finance sheet, and he's got $90 million, and everyone else has $90.
Yeah.
But that's a great way for even a casual observer to read kind of a recap of my own congressional seat where I live. I believe there's 9 Republicans and 4 Democrats in the primary. And so based on what the things I read tonight, it will give me a much better understanding of who's really here to play, who's got the money to come out and win this. And it'll especially give you a great idea of who's going to make it to a runoff in a seat like that.
Now we've had a couple of folks announce maybe what they were bringing in, but not necessarily posted. Tallarico said that he had brought in quite a bit.
Tallarico has announced, I believe John Cornyn today announced that he had raised $7 million in the last cycle. And some of these, that's what the candidate raised. They have PACs that are also raising. So you have to pay attention a little bit to that. Anybody can buy an ad. Anybody can buy a Facebook ad or send you a text message. But those will start coming in. Usually if you're press releasing it early, you want to get ahead of that news cycle when we're going to start talking about everybody tomorrow.
Sure.
You know you did a good job, and you want that to be the story on the day that everybody's filing. So let's talk about a few of the big races. I think that we all assume Jasmine Crockett is the front runner for the Democratic nomination for the Senate seat. A poll came out today, not from either candidate, that James Tallarico is up by 9 is what it says, which I think is shocking. He got asked in his press conference today if he was no longer the underdog, and he said, "We are running as the underdog. I feel like the underdog. We'd be the underdog in the primary and in the general if we were to make it." That is a race that will be decided on March 3rd. It's not going to go into a runoff, so we'll know before we go to bed, most likely March 3rd, who the Democratic nominee for Senate's going to be. I think it's going to be closer than maybe Jasmine Crockett thought it would be when she got in.
Mm-hmm.
I think she maybe underestimated the work he'd been doing and the money he had raised and how effective that would be. But it's still 33 days until early voting, so a lot can and will happen in the next 33 days.
Now he claims to have only raised from small donors.
I think he's bragging about the small donors.
Okay.
I'm sure he has some also larger backers, but and he wasn't used to this. There's limits in federal spending, whereas when he was a state representative, he could get
unlimited.
big checks from a few people. There's pretty strict federal guidelines, so he can only get, really only small dollar donations except for third-party PACs. So that is going to be, I think, the race to watch on the Democrat side. Andrew White, who was running for governor against Hinojosa in the Democrat primary for governor, bowed out of the race right after the first of the year, just saying the money wasn't there and we should all rally behind Hinojosa. So I look for that to be a blowout. Nobody's going to vote for you if you're not asking for it. Yeah. So then on the Republican side, the most interesting thing that's come out in the triangle of John Cornyn, Wesley Hunt, and Ken Paxton is that President Trump has said he's not endorsing in any more Senate races before the primary, including
he's decided to keep that powder dry.
And so I think that it probably disappoints all three camps that is the hottest endorsement in the Republican Party. They've all been vying for it in different ways. Right now, the message is John Cornyn is really shooting at Wesley Hunt because he has missed votes. Yeah. Republicans have a razor-thin margin in the House, and Wesley Hunt is down here campaigning. And so really kind of taking shots at him on social media, probably online, because that's going to go into a runoff. It's just making sure that it's John Cornyn and Ken Paxton.
Yeah, and it's a great message. You want to run to represent the people in Washington,
and you can't even
do it while you've got the seats.
It's an evergreen message. It's also one of the clearest messages I'm seeing come out of that. A lot of it is, it's hard to extrapolate. They're talking about border, they're talking about immigration, they're talking about who can stand with President Trump the most. And all three of those men have records of standing with President Trump. Right. And so it's just manipulating tiny words and votes from years ago and things like that. This is, you didn't show up yesterday. And so I think it's going to stick. I think it will keep Wesley Hunt from gaining much. I think he's got about 16% of the vote right now.
And everybody's predicting that's going to be a runoff, right?
It's got to be a run. I don't see a viable path for anyone to come over 50 with as much money as all three are spending.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Who else have we got?
Well, last time we talked, Congressman Veazey had decided to run for county judge of Tarrant County and leave his congressional seat, which the boundaries had been moved. He was no longer going to represent where he lived or anywhere in Fort Worth. He decided after the cutoff to rerun for his congressional seat that he wasn't going to run for anything. He's not going to run for county judge, so he is heading towards retirement. And he's always been a thoughtful and conscientious member of the House, and we will miss him at the commission. Yeah. He's always happy to talk to us, so we wish him the best in retirement. Something tells me we haven't seen the last of him.
No.
A lot of people retire and then have a second act.
Yeah.
We have a president who didn't so much retire, but took a break.
Took a break and got a
came
second
back.
act. Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
And to me, the race for Texas 33 to replace Mark Veazey is one of the most interesting seats I've ever seen, because you have two current or former representatives running. Congresswoman Julie Johnson, who currently represents 32, but that's going to be a Republican seat, so she moved over to 33. And then Colin Allred, who used to represent 32, retired to run for Senate, lost, and now is running against Julie Johnson. The most interesting thing is I think everyone thought the party leadership would stay out of that. It's two solid Democrats. That's going to be a Democrat seat. It's going to be a win for them regardless of who it is. The leadership of the House, Hakeem Jeffries and his entire leadership team have all come out behind Julie Johnson.
Yeah.
So
big swing for her.
I look for her to help her fundraising, which in turn, if I'm guessing, and I don't usually guess, I would put more chips on Julie Johnson winning.
Yeah.
Colin Allred has the benefit of probably more name recognition. The Democrat Party spent millions and millions of dollars making sure everyone in Texas knew his name 2 years ago, and so we'll see if that translated to the district that isn't even where he used to represent.
Right.
So
So just because everybody in Texas has his name recognition, he's not running for a seat for all of Texas. He's running for a seat in North Texas.
A small part of North Texas.
Yeah.
So, and then in seat 32, which is currently Julie Johnson's seat, has been redistricted to a Republican seat, is a fascinating one. Not a lot of names you would know for any reason. There are 9 people in the Republican race. I could read you all their names, but I think I'll spare us both. I look for it to be a runoff, probably between Ryan Binkley and Jace Yarborough, if I was a betting woman. They have the most name recognition and the most money behind them at the moment. I think endorsements are starting to roll out. Ryan Binkley, I think, got in earlier and had some money earlier, is more of a self-funder. Jace came in later, but has some... He's getting some dollars and some significant endorsements with lots of state reps and local congressmen as well. So that's the one to watch. I think if you're paying attention to the Republican congressional side, it's going to be an interesting primary night.
Yeah.
And who gets into that runoff, if it's a runoff, is going to be very tied to the Ken Paxton, John Cornyn runoff. So that it's all going to be very, very interesting. But
we'll have plenty to talk about for quite a while.
Quite a while. So yeah, that is kind of the status of where we are in North Texas for the upcoming primaries.
Awesome. Well, always entertaining to hear what's going on and who's doing what. I think it's fascinating with Tallarico and seeing where he pulls from and what he's trying to do. My dream ticket would be to watch Paxton and Tallarico go at it for the Senate. I just think the drama from that would be incredible. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I just think the drama from that particular pairing would be amazing.
TJ likes chaos, is what we're learning right here today.
It's fair. You heard it here first. You heard it first. And remember, folks, this is all just what's going on at the federal level. We also, overlapping this, of course, are the May elections for our city councils and all of our suburbs. Everybody in North Texas, your municipal elections, they count. Pay attention. People have started filing. They started filing yesterday.
Yes, I saw several mayors very proud of their piece
very
of paper.
proud. Everybody's signing.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a photo like that too. They're important. But we're going to start seeing that the local mayors and city councils really start hitting. So don't get confused. I do it all the time. I transpose my M months all the time. So
well, and currently going on right now is the runoff for SD9.
Yes.
Which Kelly Hancock was appointed to be comptroller when Glenn Hager left. So there was a primary, they call them jungle primaries, which means Republicans and Democrats in the same election earlier or late last year. The runoff is currently going on against a Democrat and a Republican to see who will fill that seat. Because it is so late, they are spared the primary from this cycle. It's all very strange, but
lots of math.
Soon we should have a new senator.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be sworn in for SD9. Right here in North Texas.
And that one's fascinating because we had such a fight and so much noise on the Republican side, and the Democratic candidate took first place.
Yeah.
So it definitely made people sit up and take notice on Senate District 9. So what we're going to move into our other topic today, which we thought was relevant, as we've had a few pieces of legislation that have been turned on as of January 1st. So there was a lot of noise about Senate Bill 840, but I'd also like to talk a little bit about Senate Bill 1567 and House Bill 21.
And for those of us not paying as close attention to maybe at this table, we were at this table, what are those bills?
So Senate Bill 840, that was the bill that said, hey, you've got commercial space that's not been doing anything, you can put residential there. And so that was for cities at 150,000 in population or higher. So my city of Louisville is 140,000 currently, so we missed that until the next census. But this is going to impact the Irvings, the Planos, the Dallases, the Fort Worths. We have a few cities in that size range. And what it does is basically says, hey, maybe you've got some underutilized commercial area. You can now turn that into multifamily. Where cities had some heartburn on this one, there were really, I think, two key topics. One was, okay, I've got this distribution warehouse center or commercial space that is equipped for office use, a small office maybe. So, but its plumbing systems are not designed for 300 people.
Yeah.
And they're not designed for multifamily type of infrastructure. The water infrastructure may or may not be there, depending on what was being manufactured in that
traffic
phase.
patterns can also be, anytime multifamily is added, traffic patterns kind of are usually studied and planned for.
Not in this case. And so you won't have sidewalk infrastructure probably. If you have children in this new space, they're going to be contesting with other industrial uses right next to them. So you could conceivably have, children walking to school while 18-wheelers are trying to get stuff moved from that area.
They can just race.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens. So those were some of the heartburn pieces that we had on Senate Bill 840. It did pass, and it there are certain things about it that I think make sense, but in general, I think cities would like to have better control over how their land uses are set up, so that we don't have issues where it's a competing land use. For example, one of the arguments that we brought down to the state was to say, hey, if you want to do this, fine, but let's make it so that it's adjacent to housing, or it's adjacent to a less intensive use. That way, there was more likely to be sidewalk infrastructure and those types of things for pedestrian uses, and to make that place, more livable. I don't know about you, but you get into some of these industrial parks and think about how it was if it gets converted to
it's
multifamily.
Not where I want to walk with my stroller.
It's not great. It's not great. So that's Senate Bill 840. Senate Bill 1567. This one's interesting because housing, especially if you've got a university, there are lots of rules and regulations because those types of cities, municipalities, they are trying to contain their housing stock from turning into dormitories effectively. And so you have laws on the books that have finally been overturned, basically, that are kind of they're a little sketchy in that they're saying who can live within a house from a non safety type of mindset. So you see rules out there that say no more than 4 people that are non-related can live in a house. Well, what's non-related mean? Am I hanging out with my nephew, my cousin?
Yeah.
Who's going to police that? And so that's part of the challenge that you have, especially in density housing around universities and those types of environments. So up here, Denton, Arlington, Fort Worth. Fort Worth is constantly having challenges with
wait till they find out about sorority houses.
Yeah, all the good stuff. So what 1567 did is it said, you don't get to do that anymore. You need to have some sort of health safety reason. So that's typically going to boil down to square footage. Okay. So how many bedrooms can you have, and the square footage per person, which unfortunately we did this a couple of years ago when we were looking at our housing stock, because we were seeing our neighborhoods where extended families, maybe it was family, maybe it wasn't, but it was a lot more people in the house than you would think would want to be maybe in a duplex. And so you're seeing more cars in the streets, not parked in the neighborhood, but parked on street parking because there's not enough room in the garage. There's not enough room in the driveway. So we actually dug into that. And when you start looking at the national code that most of us follow, the number of people per square foot is actually pretty high. So, a 2,000 square foot home might actually be able to contain upwards of a dozen people.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it basically it sounds like a lot of bunk beds.
Yeah.
Which is not great. It's not great for neighborhoods that are built out for a particular level of density. But that's the challenge that we've always had because we don't live in a country where it's papers, please. We live in a space where you can. Don't give me that look. I may have put that in there for a reason. But we don't live in a space where we're going to be able to police that. Yeah. Because we're protected from that. So how do we walk through as a city being able to maintain our neighborhood integrity, but also being able to provide, the housing stock that's necessary for folks. So 1567 is interesting in that the state finally said, you know what, enough of these odd little laws. If you're going to do this, you're going to do this around health and safety issues and be able to tie that to your code. So cities, I think, are still kind of looking at that. It's kind of been handled for a long time, but if you're a university town, this may be something that pops back up on your radar for your local council. Now on HB 21, this one's interesting. So we have this entity called a Housing Finance Corporation. And what that is a city can go ahead and create an HFC, and the HFC can work to provide tax credits to developers typically for reduced income housing or reduced cost housing. So you might have you might have a development with 100 units, and 20 of those units have a rent basis of cap of 30% of the average median income of your community, whereas 50% might be at full value, 100%. So you're using that to subsidize and create mixed income environments, which that's if you're going to do affordability, especially in a municipality, what you don't want to do is put all of one socioeconomic pocket into one corner of the city. We tried that in this country. I was going to
say, it's been done multiple times.
Doesn't work.
In
Doesn't
DFW.
Work. Where we know works, and what we know has historically worked in this country is mixed income levels when you do that. So having that mix provides a stronger community. It provides a more successful development that has been created. It does all sorts of great things. So what a couple of counties figured out down in South Texas is they figured out that these housing finance corporations, everybody in law, it was set up that you would do it. So Louisville creates an HFC, Denton creates an HFC, and they buy a piece of property and they work with a developer and they do it within their community and they take it off the tax rolls to be able to help it subsidize, or they take a portion of it off to help subsidize. Well, the legislation didn't specifically say within your geographic area. So we had
it's important.
It's really important because what happened is a couple of counties figured out, hey, we could buy a piece of property in North Texas and take it off of their tax rolls, and then we get all the economic.
It's very high.
Yeah, and we get all the economic benefit of it because we work a deal with the developer, and the developer pays us a chunk of change to make that all happen. So this happened quite a bit up here in North Texas. I don't have the numbers, but it was millions, tens of millions of dollars in property taken off of the rolls. So it's fascinating. So we went down, the Senate and the House said, yeah, that was not ever the intent of HFCs to do that. And so they locked that all down. What's really going to end up happening is the ones that are already under that, while there's some lawsuits still in place, what's probably just going to happen is that's going to time out or expire. Yeah. But fascinating piece of, what you would think would be just like, oh, yeah, of course, the local government is the only one that could have that conversation about removing something from a tax roll. No, that's what happens when you rush law. It creates these kinds of holes. So
well, and it seems that all of this comes down to, and we've talked about it multiple times, the constant tension between wanting to make sure local municipalities have control over what's built in their city and what happens in their city. And also there's a continual increase in housing, especially affordable housing, and figuring out where the push and pull can be for that and how we prioritize. That's what we're always talking about, what good legislation looks like that does both of those things, leaves local control,
right,
and increases our housing stock.
And I would love, here I am, municipal leader. I mean, if the state decides they have to stir that pot, I think the way you do that is not to say, hey, city, you have to do this in your commercial area. Is to say, look, if your build out has you at 200,000, you have to have X percent in multifamily, and then let that city figure out where that's going to go. Every city wants to be, when it starts off, wants to be 2-acre, ranchettes in Texas. Everything's just going to be built out in these big sprawling suburban communities. And then they turn around and realize over time that costs a tremendous amount of money in infrastructure, and that density actually makes some sense. And then, of course, you've got your inner ring suburbs, your first ring suburbs. Yeah. They're all built out. We don't have more land. And what we do have is infill. And so we've got to figure out how to continue that growth, but we do it in maybe more complicated ways. I can't go out to Denton and buy 2,000 acres and build a giant master plan community anymore. Not in a Louisville. I can do it in a Denton. I can do it somewhere else. But now those families and those neighborhoods are going, well, where's my amenities? Where's the cool stuff that I want to do? Oh, and also my commute is now 90 minutes to 2 hours a day.
Yeah, I'll take my lack of pool for a shorter commute.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't.
So that's the trade-off that we're dealing with. Plus, the infrastructure costs of all the roads and other infrastructure that we're going to need to support all that. And I think you bring up a really important point in all of this. What is affordable, right? So that is a different question depending on which community you're in across the country.
And so much of affordability and affordable housing isn't under the control of a city. It's not under the control of a state. It's the price of lumber. It's the price of wages. Things are getting continually more expensive. It makes new housing more expensive.
Yeah, not only those, but insurance. It's a huge driver right now in costs. So I think when you look at it from a municipal standpoint of how do we solve for making things more affordable, the piece that works best, at least in my mind, is that you have diversity in housing stock, that you don't have your entire community built to one specific standard. The diversity in housing stock allows people to migrate up and down the value chain. You might have somebody that starts off in an apartment and they love your community and they find a starter home, and then they move into something bigger, and then they eventually their kids leave and they downsize. So there's that whole life cycle that some of our cities, if they build to a monoculture, they'll never happen. I want my kids to come to my community and live with me. Well, your community is a monoculture. It doesn't work.
Michael Morris actually talked about this once and said it one of the best ways, which is you need your housing stock to match your jobs. If you're going to have a muffin shop, you've got to have housing that someone who works at a muffin shop can afford.
Right.
If you're going to have a big company, you need housing stock that is the CEO of that company can afford, and everywhere in between. Our best communities are where our teachers, our pastors, our firefighters, our marketing assistants can all live within that community and contribute at different levels and have a very wide array of housing stock that matches what the infrastructure,
all that whole value chain. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for housing. The state doesn't tend to want. Last session was a big school funding and housing session. It'll be interesting to see if those become the issues that come back, but they don't typically come back to back like that. We'll see. I think on housing, what I'm interested in seeing is we've had several communities here in North Texas where, okay, state, you've told me that I have to do more multifamily. Fine. My multifamily has to be a minimum of 8 stories. It has to have a spa. There's several communities that have done that have really put the barriers to what the product has to have. They've made them very, very high.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if the state comes back and says, no, you're just trying to end run what we were trying to do, and we're going to fix that this next session.
And
so
we'll multifamily, what are the bedroom requirement? There's so many ways.
So many ways that they can play that game. Yeah, absolutely. So hope that gives you a good insight into what's going on as far as housing stock, and some of the new pieces that you may be seeing in your local city council being discussed, especially if you've got some higher education space floating around. But that's I think all the news. That's what's got people talking in my part of the world anyway.
I think so. Well, we will see you next month when we give our last pre-primary update. It'll be the last time we speak with such unknowing, and we'll know a lot more by March. So.
Absolutely. Hey, if you guys want to sponsor or you want to come in and be a guest presenter and have an interesting topic, we'd love to talk with you. We're continuing to put this out on a monthly basis, and of course, as we grow that, we'll start. If you want to see more of this, we'll start putting it in more often than monthly if we can get to that level. But we really appreciate you guys taking some time. We hope you found it interesting, and if there's anything we can do, Topic North Texas is here.
Have a great day.